So let's dig in and look at some of the business models that are out there. Now, if you Google business model or access model examples, you'll find dozens of different types and long lists of some of fairly exotically named business models. But the reality is that they really boil down to a few core models that are then modified and slightly changed to produce something else. And what I want us to do for the next few minutes is just to look at 6 main models that form the basis of many others. So there's the freemium model, the subscription model, the advertising model, the customer usage model, which is really pay as you go or pay as you use, licensing model, and the subsidy model. The reality is that you may start with one of these models when you're designing your business model, but you'll probably pick and choose elements from each to create your own hybrid version. So they're the 6 we're going to look at. We're actually going to spend most time on the freemium and the subscription models, because the ones that follow often plug in some ways to those. So let's start with freemium. So freemium model is basically offering something for free. Usually it's to attract new users, but sometimes you'll want to be doing that because you're just trying to give away a service because it's providing it's something valuable to people who can't afford it. But you're giving away a version of a product or a service for free. It's not the same as a free time limited trial, because that's generally it's a promotional technique to try and get people bought in. Although that is a technique that we'll look at a little bit later that's used with the subscription business model. But freemium is generally providing indefinite access to anybody who wants to use it, and it's relying on the fact that a small percentage of the users will find so much value from that free version that they're willing to upgrade to a higher functionality version that they pay for. So there's a couple of examples that you're probably familiar with. The first is Candy Crush, the mobile phone game, which at its peak, even though it's a freemium game, was earning £1 million a day because of in-app purchases that a percentage of users and gamers were prepared to pay to do things like skip levels. So, that small percentage of people was contributing enough revenue for the development and the hosting and the continuation of that game for many millions of people. Dropbox is another example that you may be familiar with. So if you sign up for Dropbox, you get 2 gigabytes for free, and then you can earn additional storage for recommending a friend. But there are also paid for options for things like storage and additional functionality and backups and things like that. But again, I think it's less than 10% of Dropbox users actually pay for the service, but they are still phenomenally profitable. Now, for organizations that are 100% commercial, that model is really designed to be the beginning of a sales funnel, and they're aiming to convert as many free users to the paid model as possible. But in a not-for-profit sector setting, that might not be the same, and it's likely to have a slightly different expression, because the impact that the organization is trying to create is not necessarily pure revenue, but it's more likely to be a change in behavior or circumstance for as many people as possible. So that potentially means giving the product or the service away for free to many low-income users, but then recouping the costs by charging perhaps more wealthy users. Or it may mean finding an entirely different revenue stream that employs alternative business models to fund the free access for the others. So RedHat, for me, is an interesting example of an organization that sits somewhere in the middle. So it's a major player in the open source free software world, and it provides a wide range of free Linux software and publications to developers. But it funds that free access by offering a wide range of paid for products and services and training for enterprise customers. Now, in 2018, RedHat earned revenues of around $3.5 billion, and it was employing 13,000 people. And in July in 2019, IBM bought the company for $34 billion. Now, that's it's an interesting example of an organization that is much of its activity is giving stuff away for free, and yet it's able to create significant revenues and value to fund that in some really interesting ways. So the key here, as with all business models, is to work back from the outcome or the impact that you're trying to create and combine different product and service and revenue models to fund that level of free access that you need to offer. So one of the most common ways to create revenue from a freemium model is to combine it with a subscription model. So let's move on and take a look at that.